The First Airplane, How It Changed the World by Emily and Kaity Bolger. In 1899, Wilbur Wright sent a letter to the Smithsonian Institute asking about flight experiments to be conducted in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Before creating an airplane, the Wright brothers flew gliders. Gliders were different than an airplane. Gliders did not have an engine. The Wright brothers conducted many research. Sometimes they spent days watching the way birds fly through the air. They used this method to gather the majority of their research. In order to create propellers for the airplane, the brothers had to see what a propeller really was. They noticed that a propeller was just a wing that rotated on an axis. Now the measurements are ready to be made. The wingspan was 12.3 meters, the length was 6.4 meters, the height was 2.8 meters, and the engine was estimated to be a horizontal, 4-cylinder, water-cooled, 12-horsepower machine to fly the airplane. Since the brothers owned a bicycle shop, some of the parts of the plane was made out of bicycle parts. Half the transmission was made out of bicycle parts. Wind warping was an idea created by the brothers. They thought this would allow the pilot to control the airplane. They constructed this idea by their research on the way birds fly through the air. The first airplane had a big impact economically because it gave a more sufficient way to send mail. The airplane also changed the world politically because it gave a faster way for politicians to get to their destination. The brothers used an anemometer to measure the wind speed so the plane wouldn't crash if the winds were too strong. In Kitty Hawk on December 14, 1903, the flyer flew for the first time. It took them 4 attempts to make the airplane fly. It flew approximately 3.5 seconds. All the controls were responsive. December 17, 1903, Orville set up the controls and the flyer flew for 12 seconds. This was the second time after all the damage was fixed.
This is the Wright Brothers Memorial, rising 60 feet above the sands at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It was built to celebrate the invention of a technology that defined the 20th century. Here in 1903, 2 young men who had dreamed of flying turned that fantasy into fact by making the first manned, heavier-than-air, machine-powered flight in the world. Their names were Wilbur and Orville Wright. Orville was born in Indiana in 1867, and Wilbur 4 years later in Dayton, Ohio. Early on, the boys looked to their mother for mechanical expertise and their father for intellectual stimulation. This background, along with their natural curiosity and study of science, prepared them for a remarkable future. In 1893, Wilbur and Orville opened a bicycle manufacturing and repair shop. It was here they began to investigate the possibilities for powered flight. After business hours, their workshop became a laboratory where they experimented with motorless glider designs. They studied wind charts from around the country and reports of glider experiments from abroad. By 1900, they were ready to test their theories on the wind-blown dunes of Kitty Hawk. They experimented here every autumn and winter for more than 3 years. This background, along with their natural curiosity and study of science, prepared them for a remarkable future. In their field hangar and tool shop, the brothers explored radically new concepts for flight based on wind behavior and aircraft control. It was here they shaped the first practical airplane that was self-powered. Finally, the time came to leave the laboratory and to try their wings. Here we see Orville making some adjustments prior to takeoff. December 17, 1903 was to be a remarkable day in history, although at the time, the world paid little attention. Alternating at the controls of the aircraft for 4 flights, the Wright brothers finally traveled over 800 feet under machine-generated power. These short flights were the first time a powered, heavier-than-air machine achieved controlled, sustained flight with a pilot on board. That chilly December day, the Wrights and their airplane, called the Flyer, broke through the barrier of the sky. Through methodical testing and scientific ingenuity, Wilbur and Orville Wright launched the new age of flight. Today's air travel and voyages into space are additional steps along that path first traveled by the Wright brothers.
The airplane today is very different than the first airplane. Now it is the safest way to travel.